Good evening. Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for joining us this evening. It is the February 2nd, 2022 Louisville City Council meeting. I'm Mayor Ashley Stolzman, and because of COVID-19, this meeting is being held electronically and is being recorded. To request permission to speak during public comment periods, an attendee can raise their hand by clicking the raise hand button, which you'll find at the bottom of your screen. Attendees calling in on their phone can dial *9 and a raised hand will appear on your behalf. When I acknowledge a member of the public and the clerk unmutes you, please tell us your name, your address, and your comments. Each person will have 3 minutes for whatever they'd like to say. If you wish to speak on another topic, please raise your hand. Again, thank you for following these directions and maintaining meeting decorum. City Clerk Muth, could we please have a roll call?
Mayor Stolzman?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Maloney?
Here.
Councilmember Brown?
Here.
Councilmember Dickinson?
Here.
Councilmember Fahey?
Here.
Councilmember Lay?
Here.
Councilmember Most?
Here.
Thank you, everyone. The topic for tonight's special meeting is to look at the adoption of our 2022 City Council work plan. I'm going to turn it over to City Manager Durbin to set the stage. We always have a work plan discussion in December to put the ideas out there, and then we go into it more in January, and we're amending our process a bit this year in light of the events. So City Manager Durbin, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Mayor. Just a quick intro from me. Yes, this conversation started in December and was scheduled to be wrapped up on January 11th. And obviously due to the Marshall fire, that was postponed. And so here we are. Also, there has been a number of changes in terms of priorities that are recommended for you to consider in your work plan. And what this really is about managing council's work plan, the time we spend preparing policy items for your consideration. This doesn't address all the other things that staff has ongoing on a regular basis, as well as other initiatives. And just one last thing that I'd like to note before I turn it over to our deputy city manager is I mentioned to council last week that we've been working really hard on this private property debris removal program with our partners at Boulder County, Town of Superior, the state of Colorado, and FEMA, trying to put together this program to get this done comprehensively and quickly to remove public health hazards, as well as get recovery along the way faster and better. And I was saying last week that I was hopeful to have more concrete information because I know there's a lot of questions about this, and these are important questions for impacted families. And I just want to say, we have a communication that's being wrapped up between all 3 jurisdictions, Boulder County, Town of Superior, and City of Louisville, that we anticipate to ship out early tomorrow morning. So please look for that communication. I think that'll provide a lot more certainty, and I'm looking forward to getting that out to the community. So with that, I'll turn it over to our Deputy City Manager, Davis, and she will get you started.
Thank you, City Manager Durbin, Mayor and City Council. Nice to see everyone this evening. So Jeff has provided a little bit of kind of a status update. I think you're all aware of the City Council work planning process that we undertake each year. Just for kind of an overview, we typically have 2 meetings, a meeting in December, during which time City Council comes to the table with ideas and recommendations for consideration and discussion for the upcoming year's work plan. And then in January, we take some time to go through all of those items and recommendations. And in between those 2 meetings, staff does a little bit of research and some work to kind of further scope and define what those might look like, so you can kind of understand what those ideas might look like in action for City Council discussion and direction. So with some of the changes that we've had with the Marshall fire, we are coming forward tonight with a proposal for City Council to discuss for the 2020 work plan that includes some new unanticipated items that relate to Marshall fire recovery, as well as some changes to some of the items that were previously recommended to carry forward and to move forward, and then some recommendations for some of the new items that were brought forward. So June Ramos is going to walk through this with you and facilitate your discussion. I'm going to real quickly just talk to you about the sections of the work plan because we've revised it a little bit. And then I do also want to mention that we have, I believe, most, if not all, of our department directors on this evening, so that if you have specific questions about any of the work plan items, we can get into more detail when you're discussing them with June. So Starting on page 14 of the packet, you'll see a proposed work plan with Marshall Fire changes. There's a whole new section at the top of this proposed work plan, and this includes some recovery items. And these items were brought forward through city staff and also through some recommendations that came forward through city council members. And we really tried to stick to items, as we do always with the work plan, that require city council engagement and city council discussion and direction. So this by no means is a comprehensive list of everything that we're going to have to do in response to the Marshall Fire, but it is a list of those items that thus far we know about and that we believe are going to require some council policy direction and discussion. So those are items A through G. Those are 7 items in that section. The next section is the section that was previously on. It was carry forward and ongoing. So these are items that were on the agenda in 2021 and were already either underway in some fashion or staff has already initiated them. Some of them are partially done. And some of them are just sort of, in different phases or are just kind of being initiated at this point. So those are carry forward and ongoing items in the green section. Below that section, we have new initiatives. So these were initiatives that you all had identified previously during our December meeting. What's in this list starting on page 16 of new initiatives are some items that staff is recommending that we move forward as new initiatives. There are other new initiatives that came about that we are including later on the work plan agenda that we're not recommending go forward. And then the sort of peach section or orange section after that, those are our annual or recurring items. And so the annual and recurring items are items that we have to do as a matter of kind of regular business that you all are required to engage with. So that's kind of how it's structured. You'll see the final section that starts on page 20. And these are those items that were brought forward that we're recommending are removed for consideration from 2022. And it doesn't mean that they would never get done, but it's something that given our capacity, we would recommend not moving forward. So we are making these recommendations based on a few factors. We always look at the work plan in the context of both city council capacity and the amount of time that you all have to do your work together, as well as staff capacity and bandwidth. So the addition of a lot of the Marshall Fire work has put a lot and will continue to, we believe the recovery work will continue to put a high demand on staff moving forward in the next few years, but certainly through 2022. And therefore, we wanted to make sure that we had room to prioritize that work and utilize our resources on that work while continuing some of the work that already is ongoing and that is being carried forward, and also bringing in some new initiatives that may be complementary to work that we're already doing, removing any initiatives that might just be sort of either in conflict or not directly in conflict, but that may not be as effective given community engagement, the kind of status of community engagement right now and what we're focused on, our kind of current communication and kind of other priorities that the community may have right now given the Marshall Fire recovery. So that's kind of the context we were looking at these all these items. And just one more reminder, we always kind of try to look at the work plan as a whole with, again, what is realistic to be accomplished in that year. And it's not, we can't pin an exact number on it, but I will just say that typically we have anywhere between, maybe 15, 20 work plan items that City Council then kind of rates as high, medium, or low priority, in addition to those items that are reoccurring and ongoing. So right now you'll see that last year, I'll say we had 15 items, 5 were high, 10 were medium, and 4 were low, not including those ongoing items. And what we have in front of you now is I think 7 items that are Marshall Fire items. And then if we just were to move forward with the carry forward items, that would be 8 additional items. And then with the new initiative items, it's a total of 17. So just to give you an idea of kind of what's on there now, which we sort of tried to scope as something that would be realistic for actual completion in 2022. So I think that's all I have right now to just sort of set the stage, and I will turn it over to the mayor and June.
Thank you very much. So June, just before I turn it over to you to facilitate the council discussion, I think this would be a good take comment from the community to get input on what the community would like to offer at this meeting. So if there are any members of the public that would care to comment this evening, please raise your hand so we can call on you and find out what you would like to tell us. And just as a reminder, you'll tell us your name and your address, and then you'll have 3 minutes to tell us anything you'd like to. First, we have Beth Eldridge.
Hi, I'm Beth Eldridge at 378 South Taft Court. And just want to acknowledge that we are weaving together our pre-fire vision of Louisville 2022 with our current reality, and that housing is one of the major threads that runs through both of those. And there are actions that the council can take, for example, to develop clear lines of communication, to work with builders while they develop proposals to create the housing we need. We heard about this as communities are organizing the Building Expo, and as we think about our longer term vision for housing that is affordable, for the Louisville Council to be able to work with developers so they know if they're on the right track, so they know if they will be able to work in the community. It's really important. And I appreciate also the processes that you've started, for example, expediting permits, thinking about maybe a library of housing designs for people to rebuild, and considering things like the setbacks of housing that were already existing versus the codes. I also want to encourage you to continue mobilizing resources for fire survivors, for example, taking advantage of the state ARPA dollars to provide assistance to those who are underinsured and struggling, and to remember that the character of our neighborhoods lies in the people who live there and who are trying to rebuild there, and to allow flexibility and choices as people work through that. Prior to Marshall Fire, the City Council also identified housing as an issue. For example, I'm a licensed teacher, and the only way that I can live in Louisville is because I bought a 1-bedroom condo back in 2005. Since then, housing prices have doubled, but wages haven't kept up with inflation. If I taught in Longmont today and paid the average Louisville rent of $2,100 a month, it would take me almost 20 years to save 20% for the down payment of the same 1-bedroom condo that is now valued at about $310,000. So clearly housing was already a crisis, even for the middle class. And one step to help us to become more affordable, reaching our goal of 12% or even 20% affordability by 2035, is to zone the RTD site as a mix of commercial, residential, and affordable housing for transit-oriented and mixed-use development. It would create a pocket of vibrant housing and save on commuter traffic and greenhouse gases. Of course, right now our priority is rebuilding from the Marshall Fire, and I wholeheartedly support that. I'm in a hotel room right now. Luckily, my home can be cleaned, it's still there. But I hope when we take a step back to look at that bigger picture, we remember to rebuild inclusively for all kinds of people to be able to live in Louisville. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Peggy Leach.
Good evening. My name is Peggy Leach, and I live at 209 South Lincoln Avenue. Thank you for allowing public comment on this year's work plan. I know that council and staff are very busy with the Marshall Fire recovery, and I really appreciate your work. I am speaking tonight to urge City Council to prioritize affordable housing as much as possible. Louisville was already becoming unaffordable before the fire, and now housing supply is reduced and demand is even higher. I am afraid that Louisville is going to become another Boulder if we are not careful. I see a lot of small and medium-sized homes being demolished and replaced with much bigger houses. That seems like a trend in the wrong direction when we are trying to become a more affordable community. Another item in the work plan is equity, diversity, and inclusion. I think housing affordability is one piece of achieving that goal. We need to have diversity in housing to attract diversity in our town. I heard about this special meeting from the East County Housing Opportunity Coalition, also known as ECHO. I agree with their focus on affordable housing in Boulder County, and I think some of their solutions seem very practical. I have lived in the Dutch Creek neighborhood for 39 years. I am told this neighborhood is fairly affordable, or at least it used to be. Because of demand in Louisville, my 1,300 square foot home is valued by various realtors at over $600,000. That doesn't sound very affordable to me. It is a very desirable location, as much of Louisville is, with downtown, schools, and trails within walking or biking distance. But how can people who are just starting out afford to live in Louisville? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Larry Donner.
Yes, I would like to encourage council to, my name is Larry Donner. I lost my home at 1020 Willow Place in Louisville. And I would like to encourage city council on their work plan to develop legislation to force everyone in Louisville to purchase their electrical power, as those of us who are fire victims are going to be required to acquire a 15-year contract to purchase power from solar facilities and wind facilities. And I think in order to allow the rest of the community to share in our misery, I think you ought to consider legislation forcing the entire city into this. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have RJ Harrington.
Good evening, neighbors. RJ Harrington, 457 East Raintree Court. We still have our home and are fortunate to have received positive results from our environmental assessment testing. So we'll have very little interior mitigation on our home. We did, in fact, invest in our home and are 100% electric, very well air sealed. We have on-site rooftop solar, ground source heat pump, heating and cooling, charging 3 electric vehicles on that solar. And so the investments can be made and they are not crippling. Of course, tonight we are here to comment on the work plan. The Marshall Fire continues to impact our community with a variety of traumas. Most especially what I'm witnessing is a variety of astroturfing and disinformation campaigns accompanied by a lot of misinformation that builds on some of that disinformation. So with that trauma, on top of the Marshall Fire trauma, on top of the pandemic trauma, it's obviously very difficult for us to see through to what a 22 work plan will look like. And so I continue to applaud you all, you pseudo volunteers on council and city staff for what you've done with this work plan to make it accessible for all of us, most especially you all, to really take a big bite out of what's going to be required vis-a-vis the Marshall Fire and recovery, and what is necessary to continue to look at how this community can plan for the future and ultimately reduce our overall greenhouse gas emissions. That is what's most fundamentally important to myself and my own bias, which you've heard before, for an inevitable biosphere. Of course, a lot of the things that had to get pulled off of this year's work plan are understandable. Sadly for me, they involve a lot of reduction of our greenhouse gas emissions, but we can take that up as we continue to respond to the fire and said recovery efforts. I also am very appreciative that although the comp plan is well overdue, we didn't reject that entirely, that we'll begin some pre-planning this year, because to the earlier points about affordable housing, much of what's coming to planning staff, planning commission, and council is based on an ancient comp plan. And I'll look forward to that update. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next, we have Jeff Franklin.
Thank you, Council. My name is Jeff Franklin. I'm live at 515 West Fur Way. I'm here today on behalf of ECHO, the East Colorado Housing Opportunity, to support attainable housing in Louisville. My wife has previously spoken to the council as a whole and along with individual council members about the need for attainable housing. The Marshall Fire has turned an urgent need into an emergency that our friends and family can remain in Louisville as part of our community. And I think the longer we delay taking action, the more members we lose and the worse the consequences. I'm already seeing these consequences firsthand in terms of neighbors, renters who are forced to remain in unsafe living conditions because landlords are refusing smoke mitigation, and renters who have nowhere else to go if they want to maintain their children's schools. My displaced friends trying to buy a house in Louisville with $750,000 and discovering it's not enough to afford a 1,200 square foot house because the current cheapest single family home is over $1 million. Other friends in hotels across Boulder, Denver, because insurance companies have done the math and decided it's cheaper to be in a hotel than try to rent in Louisville. I urge the council to take further action, including requiring 20% attainable housing in all future development, creating a middle tier for sale housing program, flexibility in rebuilding, allowing more ADUs, subdividing houses or lots, expanding beyond only single family homes, and increasing rental housing inventory. I'm privileged to have secure housing and I'm able to speak before the council without fear of retribution from landlords or fearful neighbors who are holding on to some outdated ideas that attainable housing lowers existing home prices. Let's remember that many of the people who the council needs to be hearing from do not necessarily feel comfortable enough to speak in a public forum. We've been through a catastrophe and we need to make decisions to strengthen our community, not divide us with misinformation and fear. Support attainable housing, increase rental housing availability, and flexibility in rebuilding. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Joshua Cooperman. You might be muted on your end.
Sorry about that. Can you hear me now?
We can.
Hi, this is Josh Cooperman. I live at 216 Griffith Street. I just want to highlight a few things from the recent letter I sent to the City Council regarding the 2022 work plan. First, I'd like to speak about sustainability, as I often do. I'm, of course, very supportive of the sustainability initiatives on the 2022 provisional work plan. For instance, the second phase of considering new building codes, especially for commercial buildings, and the continuing efforts to decarbonize our municipal buildings and operations. As a previous commenter noted, there were several items regarding sustainability that have been either suggested to be removed from the 2022 work plan, and I can understand the reasons for that. But on the other hand, I think that addressing climate change is really urgent, and that we need to do as much as we can as soon as we can. So I'd like to suggest that some of the smaller items that maybe have been moved down the work plan, we try to address anyway. So for instance, with regard to the transportation master plan, I think that there are some pedestrian and bicyclist improvements that could be made with relatively small investment in the near future, especially since we're not building underpasses yet. And I would also like to suggest that when we renew the solid waste contract, that we not only extend it to all citizens, but we also figure out a way to get people to recycle and compost a lot more. Regarding the larger items like decarbonization and adaptation and mitigation, I think we should keep those in the back of our mind this year, and maybe ask the Sustainability Advisory Board to work on those. I would also like to say a few words about affordable housing. I'm also very supportive of efforts to create affordable housing in town, like the initiative on the work plan about a 30% deed restricted affordable housing in rezoned districts. And I am quite in favor of rezoning several districts in the city for either mixed use or purely residential housing to make way for more affordable housing. I'd like to make one last comment, which is not to recommend so much an addition to the work plan, but to keep something in mind, which I think is sort of cross-cutting between sustainability and affordable housing. And that is to think about revitalization of the McCaslin corridor with an eye towards both affordable housing and sustainability, particularly making it much more walkable and bikeable than it is. Thanks.
Thank you. Seeing no other public comment, we'll come back over to council members for discussion of our work plan, and we'll start. Councilmember Most, if you have a short question, and then I'll turn it over to our facilitator, June Ramos, but Councilmember Most.
Yeah, it's not a question so much as a comment, and I'm a bit of a stickler for this sort of thing. And I just wanted to mention on page 1 of the packet, there's a statement that says staff has drafted a proposal for the 22 work plan based on council recommendations for items should be deleted or delayed or deferred, and the addition of fire recovery efforts acquiring council direction. I don't think that's accurate. I don't believe the city council actually provided recommendations. I certainly didn't, and I wasn't asked to. And I just think we should be clear about the process, just for, transparency. So just wanted to make that comment.
Thank you, Councilmember Most. That's a good correction to note and to have recorded into the meeting minutes. So Mayor Pro Tem Maloney and I worked with staff to just have a starting point for this evening, and it's only that. And so tonight is the opportunity for council members to weigh in. I appreciate that correction being added into the record. So we'll turn it to June Ramos, our facilitator. June, thank you for helping us once again to facilitate our work plan conversation. And so we'll turn it over to you to get started.
Thank you. It's nice to see everybody, and thank you for the opportunity to work with you to close out the process that we started in December. And thank you that you are doing what is necessary to help recover and restabilize your wonderful community. So Megan and City Manager Jeff Durbin and I spoke early last week and came up with a process, and want to check that with you to make sure that this works, because this is the first time you've probably seen the documents when that was sent out in your packet. And the goal again is to prioritize those work projects and plans and to identify a true priority. And just a reminder that we're going to be looking at items that are both urgent and important. Those of you familiar with the 4 quadrants of priority, there's quadrant 1, which is urgent and priority. And a lot of there are a lot of items on there that have high urgency and high priority. There are also items that are important, but they don't have immediate urgency. But if you keep putting them off and putting them off, they increase in urgency and priority. So we want to make sure that we have a good balance and recognize that, and Megan stated it very well, that you have a staff right now that is really scrambling to try and do the work of the city and keep the restabilize the city, but also keep the city moving forward. And this is our opportunity to give input. So having said that, as we look at the items, here's a recommendation to get started, because you've not seen these items. And Meredith or Megan, if you want to put up the work plan, and let's start with the, I believe it was your page, the page that started with the page 14, the fire recovery items.
Yep, I'm going to pull that up on the screen, and then I'm going to have a separate document that I will take notes on the side versus having the actual note taking on the screen. Good. Just so you're aware, but we'll be taking detailed notes so we capture the changes. So I'll share that right now.
And one of the, while she's working on the sharing of that document, one of the things I believe that you were asked to do was come prepared with your high priority items and come prepared with your low priority items. And here's the contextual thinking around that. We're going to have most of our discussion around what's most important and what are the top priorities. And then if we also want to make sure what are the things that we can get rid of. And I don't want that to mean that you're never going to come back to them. As Megan said, these are things that we're hitting the pause button. It's a postponement. It's to be readdressed at a future period of time. But we do have to give staff their marching orders in terms of where do they put their time and attention. So let's briefly look at the Marshall Fire recovery items. They're lettered A, they're lettered rather than numbered. A through G, there are 7 items there. And I just want to make sure that council, let's just get any questions answered. Let's start with any questions that you have about item A, community design, residential building codes discussion. And I'm just going to go through these one at a time, just make sure that you have an understanding of what's in front of you, and comment from council and or questions.
Councilmember Brown.
Thank you, Ashley.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, June. I appreciate you
Thank you.
helping us today. I wanted to ask a question about what the distinction between item A and item B or C are. It seems like residential, unless the discussion is the ordinance, unless A is supposed to represent the ordinance that we already passed last meeting, or so I just need a little clarity on that.
So I think Megan Davis would be the best person.
Yes, Megan.
Megan.
Yeah, I can try to respond, and then so Councilmember Brown. So I think the first is if there are any general residential building codes that need to be addressed or changed. We did address some, previously, just last week. There's going to be some more, some staff work around that. We don't know if there will be anything else that might come up around that, but that was, I think I've got my own thing in, as Q1. So I think this is something that we may be able to just take off the list, but I think we wanted to keep it on there because it was something that council requested. And then the other two I would separate into, one is more if there's a desire to do something around more wildfire resistant building. Right. And we've kind of taken those up together, but we kept them as kind of 2 separate items. We're not sure how they're going to track moving forward with council.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, to some degree, it's probably a classification issue, right? They all seem like building code issues to some degree. But I think what you're talking about is the part A is like the setback requirements, and then anything else that we might do that might come in the future. And then B is obviously the 2021 and the net zero, and then C is fire resistant stuff. Okay, I see how that's broken out now. Thanks.
Okay, helpful. Other questions or comments about?
I think Councilmember Brown brings up a point that we should work on clarifying this so that there's less confusion. I know we got one email from a resident who was confused about what the purpose of C was, and I'm sure that can spiral out of control on social media without more clarification. So as it was described in the staff packet, there was a proposal to get direction from council on, do we look at incentivizing optional fire resistant building materials in a new code community wide? How would we do that? What would that look like over the long term? I think it was taken to mean only for the people that are rebuilding now, but I actually think the conversation is proposed very differently than was read into by reading this. So I wonder if we could make that more clear, since it's really it's not intended to be targeted at people rebuilding. It's really looking at how do we become a more resilient community in the long run, and are there programs that we can implement? That's for item C. I think B is probably captured correctly, and that's what we were working on and continue to work on next week. I actually took A to mean the residential building codes because there's a lot of confusion in the community right now, but the net zero and the IECC is one piece, but there's been a lot of discussion about other things in the building code that people are concerned about that have nothing to do with the energy efficiency code. So I thought when I read that it included things like fire sprinkling and other code requirements that people have asked council to look at. So I think we should clarify this to make it more clear and create less confusion in the community.
So just looking for some editing, Mayor?
Right, yeah, no problem with the quarters, no
Okay.
problem with the high, medium, low,
Got
but
it.
people are very I mean, this is urgent.
Yes,
That's why it says high, and I think if we label things,
Yeah.
they're open to a lot of interpretation. Mayor Pro Tem Maloney?
yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. So for A, I interpreted the way it was described by staff. So, I was thinking about the setback because of the, the planned community design and so forth. That was a big deal that we worked on last week and something that we just passed. If we want to include other items that you suggested, Mayor, I would suggest we add another item. It should be
Another row.
Another row, yes.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Maloney. Just by sort of nods, are people okay with that route?
I see
And then-
Council Member Fahey. Yeah.
Could we call this one, what we're calling A here, zoning then? And the other one codes, just for clarity. Councilmember Fahey. And then June, did you want to do the calling on people? I apologize if I wasn't supposed to do that.
I'm going to let you and I kind of wing that because I have to scroll up and down, so I don't always see the hand. So if you see it first, dive in. I appreciate your help. Councilmember Fahey?
Thank you. Yes, I'm on the A item. The feedback that I've been getting from residents is that there's some confusion about what was required in the building codes for setbacks, height, single, double family, all these different code, or no, it wouldn't be code requirements, it would be zoning requirements. And so I took A to be more of the zoning distinctions, I guess. And because there's some discussions about the corner lot people do you really have to be that far away on both sides of your house and things like that. So that was more zoning than codes, would be my impression.
Okay, so Megan is adding a line there referencing zoning changes. Does that capture what you're looking for, Councilmember Fahey?
Yes, that would.
Okay. Councilmember Most?
Yeah, I agree. I think we need to talk about zoning, and then I'm wondering, do we need 3 separate line items for code discussions, or is that one line item with 3 parts? My concern is that over time, there may be a lot of different components of codes that come up as we're in different parts of the process. So I mean, this is not my area of expertise, so I don't know, and maybe it's easier for staff to break it down, but so what we'd be talking about now is 4 line items, which is zoning, and then these 3 different code ones. Can we condense it? Does it not make sense to condense it? I'm just trying to think about it from, I don't know, organizationally, operationally, maybe, what makes the most sense.
So I
Go
think,
ahead.
I think there's consensus among the group on these bullet points. And I think that it's clear from the discussion, we're just hoping for some clarity so that when community members look at this work plan tool, they understand what the intent of the items are. But I don't think there's any disagreement among council members in including them or including them all as high. So if we can all agree, maybe staff can take this as a to-do to work on making it more clear. Is that okay with everybody?
I see some thumbs up. Okay, good.
Councilmember Lay.
Councilmember Lay, yeah.
Yeah, I just see in, apropos her comment just now on what is currently E on fire mitigation strategies. That one and public safety right below it are both listed as mediums. So they're not all high priority, at least not on this chart.
Sorry, I didn't think we had gotten down to that. I was just talking about the ones we were talking about so far. Sorry about that, Councilmember Lay.
No worries. Thanks for the
And just to respond to that, Councilmember Lay, so that category relates to staff impact, level of staff impact versus priority. So we haven't done the prioritization yet. So that helps.
Oh, okay.
Thanks.
And staff impact is one condition of prioritization, because we want to make sure that staff has the bandwidth to be able to deal with that. Okay, are we ready to move on to line D? Comments or questions?
It looks good.
I'll move on unless I hear differently from the group. Line E, the open space fire mitigation strategies for open space specifically.
Councilmember Lay.
I know the proposed maintenance strategies is a really good one. I think I understand that. But the research/data around opportunities, that's always a loaded word, or it seems to have been in the last several meetings. So what does that mean here?
Megan, do you want to address that, or is that something a council member can address? Megan?
Yeah, I'm happy to address it. And, I think it's really, they may be challenges, they may be opportunities, but they may be areas where we go back and review, wildfire mitigation plans, review our wildfire mitigation strategies, see if there are things that we could do that are newly recommended, if there are new best practices. So I think there's some work to be done there to better understand if, what we have in place, or if there are opportunities for us to improve what we're currently doing.
What are the lightning words, Councilmember Lay? What is the concern? Is there a language change?
I think I might suggest, instead of opportunities, just research/data around plan improvement.
More general, okay?
Yeah.
If there's no concern about that, Councilmember Maloney?
Thank you, June. My comment on this one is I would like to broaden the scope that's here. We have open space written down, but we also have parks and we also have golf course. And I think all of those areas need to be addressed as far as fire mitigation, because they're outdoor areas that actually contributed to the fire.
Perhaps we just put public land. Is that acceptable, Mayor Pro Tem Maloney?
Absolutely. Thank you, Mayor.
Good editing on the fly there, you guys. Councilmember Most.
Just a thought, as per Mayor Pro Tem's comment, because I know further down the list, we talk about our whole approach to asset identification and management. I'm just wondering, this is obviously something that's really critical in fire response, but ongoing, I think this has to be part of that broader approach to identifying, managing assets. So I don't know if we can put a note, just a thought that this is, we're looking at this as obviously critical emergency response right now, but ultimately it should be part of our ongoing, it should be integrated into that ongoing process. So I don't know if there's a way to note that, or just for staff to have that, because I think it's important.
Is that not captured in proposed maintenance strategies? Because once you've got a plan in place, then you have to maintain it. That's the way I understood it.
Okay, well, yeah, maybe it is. I just want to make sure that
we don't lose that
as part of it. Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else on E? F? Emergency response review.
Councilmember Brown.
Yeah, sorry, I muted myself again. The only aspect of this that I would question is just the priority level. I mean, I feel like, many of these things, if not all of them, on the Marshall Fire Work Plan should be listed as high. And I think so many people in Louisville have been concerned about how the emergency response, the sort of emergency notification system in particular was utilized or wasn't. That this seems like a pretty high priority to me.
Okay. And we're going to go back and look at priorities. This is the way it's written now, just a reminder, it's staff impact. This is based on staff input, but I think what you're doing is making a case for saying, as we discuss these from a council point of view, they're all high priorities, if I heard you correctly.
Sorry about that. I was misinterpreting that column. I apologize. Yeah.
Okay.
But anyway, high priority.
Okay.
I will accept the staff's take that this is only a medium impact. So.
Okay, in terms of their workload. Councilmember Lay, and then Councilmember Most afterwards. Councilmember Lay.
Yeah, on F, with the evacuation procedures and the emergency notification system, I noticed that one looks like it's Q2, Q3. I I presume that we're going to be piggybacking on a lot of the work that's going to be done by the county, that not only by the county, and we've got our own work to do there, but when do we anticipate, this may be a question for Megan, when do we anticipate that there will be more data available from the county around their own emergency response reviews?
So, and I would let City Manager Durbin chime in too. What we know right now is there's a facilitated learning analysis that's underway, which is not necessarily really a data review. It's more about the conditions around the event, and that's done by the U.S. Forest Service. And that I think will probably, I think maybe April, we've expected that we might have some information from that. And I don't know when the Office of Emergency Management full kind of event debrief is going to happen. City Manager Durbin, do you have any additional information on that?
No, the FLA, the facilitated learning analysis, is really about learning from the fire behavior, as you mentioned, and the evacuation and the 911 issues. The Boulder County OEM is going through some data analysis currently, and that type of thing is typically, it's 3 to 6 months down the road. So we're getting closer. I haven't heard any specific dates yet. We've continued to press on that. Lately, we've been focused on PPDR, debris removal. So I haven't been pressing on this as hard, but I will continue to do so.
Yeah, I don't really want to, belabor it, but I mean, it may be that I was just thinking in terms of Q2, that may be a little bit ambitious. I mean, I think it's really important. Don't get me wrong. It's just one that I think we want to understand what our response needs to be to make our own evacuation procedures better, to improve that system. And I know that you all are involved in those efforts even now, but I don't know. I think it's good to also try to reflect as best we can when the proper time frame is for doing these things. And it seems like Q2 may be a bit early. It's just a thought.
Noted. Okay. Councilmember Most.
So along those lines, I think we need more than a review. I think that, my perspective is we learned a lesson that we can't leave this up to the county. And unless the county comes back with something kind of monumental, I think we need not just an emergency response review, but an emergency response review and plan. Because I think it's unacceptable, what our community went through. And yeah, we're supposed to rely on Boulder County for emergency services, but if they fail, we have to have a better answer for our community than, oh, well, they failed, kind of you're on your own. So I'd like to see that expanded, and maybe that's more work. But I think it's important that we have our own emergency management plan in place for Louisville.
Mayor Stolzman.
Thank you. So I think we have to recognize where we are in the process. Like everyone on this city council has said publicly that the evacuation, the reverse 911, that whole process was unacceptable. And that's the first step in correcting the situation. And so I think we have a responsibility to get the information about all of the places where the process failed and understand that, and then work with our partners to see if there's a solution there through our partnerships. And if there's not, then we have to seek other solutions, because we have to have a safe system where we can notify people and people can get out in an emergency. But in any case, we'll have to coordinate with partners. Like, just one minor example of that is like when PDOT closed down US 36, it rerouted all of the traffic from Boulder onto South Boulder Road, making our evacuation paralyzed. So, I mean, even if we go on our own, we have to work with our partners to make sure that there's a coordinated response in an emergency. And it's not just that Louisville will have this problem, but any area of our county or our state is at risk. And so I think I think capturing the correct language is important, but I think we have to start with a collection of information to understand all the failure points so that we can understand the scope of the problem and then work to address it.
So it sounds like an iterative process there. You start with the review and then based on that recommendations and then the actual plan and action. So what can be accomplished in quarters 2 and 3? It sounds like the review is primary, if I hear you correctly, Mayor.
I think it starts with a review, and then I think I'm not too hung up on the quarters because part of it we will have to work with our partners. So I think we will be somewhat. It may go longer than that, but I think it's good to have the aspirational target of Q2, Q3 because how can we say that this can go unfixed all the way through Q3? I mean, on the other hand, it's going to take that long. Right. So I understand Councilmember Lay's point about making it accurate about how long it'll take, but we have to fix this.
Any other discussion or reactions to Councilmember Most's comments? I think it's implied that recommendation and action would follow the review, but the first priority. So Megan, it sounds like you're not editing that, so it sounds like it stands as is for now.
I think to the mayor's point, we're not sure what's going to come after some of these things. I mean, again, even when we talk about building codes, once we start debris removal and rebuilding, and we don't know what's kind of down the road. So I think this is capturing. We do know that we will have to do that review process, and then there may be a need to revise plans, create new plans, that type of thing.
Yeah, it is a good reminder, though, that the power of language frames the results we're looking for. So I think it's a point that we don't want to forget and hold that in our back pocket. Other comments? G, Marshall Fire budget and the financial impact discussion. Comments or questions on that one? Councilmember Fahey.
I agree with what is in the box, that we need to do the budget and find out what the impacts are, all the grants, all the impacts. But I think there needs to be something added about then communicating that to the general public, that's one of the biggest issues we've been having, I think, is the public not knowing what we're doing, what we're working on, when this is going to happen, when that's going to happen, how is it going to be done. So I just think that communication is critical on all of these items.
Right. Okay. Councilmember Brown, you're unmuted. Does that mean you want to speak? I saw your hand.
Well,
go ahead.
So
I'm fast.
On it, June.
And then, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate it. I know there's a lot of things that staff are doing, and we get regular updates during our study sessions about some of these things. And some of the things that come to mind are the facilitation that staff is doing with neighborhoods regarding common builders, thinking about, are there best practices or vetting contractors? Are they working to have a library of plans that have been sort of pre-vetted in some way if they're working with a production builder? I wondered to the degree to which, like, if there's those are certainly staff level things, but it strikes me that there might be council involvement or updates or budget requirements or something along those lines that we might need to get involved in. So I wonder if there's anything missing from this list that isn't quite, that's kind of ongoing, that staff and maybe council are dealing with, that we need to capture just to be complete.
I'll turn that over to your city manager and Megan.
Yeah, Jeff, I don't know if you want to chime in here, or if Lisa or Rob have any thoughts about that, if anything they anticipate would fit into the existing categories, or if it's something we might want to add, like Councilmember Brown suggested, as a category for sort of updates and engagements.
Yeah, we thought about this in terms of, where we're at and what we know at the moment. I think that's a fair point, that there may be some things that come up on the fly as we go forward. And I think this is a pretty good group of categories. One thing that we don't maybe have on here, and we really haven't done too much work on this yet because we're focused on residents, but maybe there's something about economic development in our business community, making sure that they can remain vital. We're finalizing that business survey that you heard about, but council hasn't even seen that survey yet. So there may be some things like that come out that merit some action. So maybe there's some kind of a, I don't want to put a catch-all in there, but I do think that's a fair point, that there may be some things that we haven't thought about yet.
Okay, I don't need to press it. I just want to make sure that we're capturing all of the potential work items appropriately. And if there's, we don't need to put like a miscellaneous category on here or something, but just so that we haven't missed anything. So if you all are pretty confident that we have the categories captured, then I'm fine with that.
Yeah,
And then
and oops, go.
I was just going to say, just as a reminder, the things here are things council will need to take action on. So like the staff work around some of the things that you listed, Councilmember Brown, will be ongoing for those other areas, just like we don't have listed on here like public property restoration or public property correction. Like there's a lot of additional staff work. And this is just the council work plan for prioritizing our meetings and our workload.
Yeah, and that's a good point, Mayor. Thank you. I didn't mean to.
No, good reminder.
I was trying to think about things that maybe staff were involved in that weren't listed here that might require council action. But I think your point is, I mean, this is certainly. So, in any case, I'll stop talking. So.
Okay, so go ahead.
I would just correct myself. I was trying to think of something that we might have missed, and I think that the G line there, economic impacts in finance, that does cover that on a broader basis.
I would just add, I mean, I think under insurance is obviously another area that we know is a huge issue and challenge that staff will continue to work on with the right partners. And then there could be something that we then might have to have more discussion that council might have to engage with. We don't know what those might look like, but that's, I mean, I agree, Councilmember Brown. There are a lot of issues that are still emerging. And so, it's good to make sure we're talking about them.
Okay, but it's a good question to ask. Is anything missing? Councilmember Fahey, before we move on.
I just wanted to add one more possible category then, I guess an H category for council to participate in the community meetings, and that would be a way for them to disperse all of the information to the residents that were impacted. Because we are doing that, we're holding neighborhood meetings, and if we had some kind of I guess official wordsmithing of what we should and should not say, that would be helpful.
And Councilmember Fahey, is that a specific initiative, or is that just part of good communication planning, that you would be doing a communication plan for any and all of these items, that staff would assist you in that? That sounds like a parallel process rather than a specific line item.
Well, that could be, yes. Yes, that would probably work. Yes, thank you.
Okay, so as we look at this, going back to what Councilmember Brown was talking about, you were making a case that these are all high importance from a council point of view. These are all must-dos. And the language of a must-do is, we're on it and we have to actually start working on that. So just throw the question to the group. Councilmember Brown, you started with, I think they're all high. Any other comment or discussion on that so we can move on to next categories? Where do you stand in terms of prioritization? No disagreement? Okay. It adds to the workload, but they all are high because they are indeed must-do. So, okay, great. Okay. Megan, the second category, we discussed most of these at length in the December meeting, the carry on and ongoing, but the green comments that you made are updates to that discussion. So do you want to reference some of that to get our heads wrapped around on what we're seeing so that we have a discussion and what are the next steps on this? Because these are ongoing, they still have to be continued. It's the scope and depth of the continuation.
Sure, yeah, so do you want me to go through just kind of all of them on this page? Do you want, is that how do you want to approach that?
Council, what works for you? I think I just think a real quick analysis of what's on each page and then try to handle the page at a time to move through it as quickly as we can, unless there's a major comment, question, or disagreement.
Okay, so with EDI, we have sort of two parallel efforts going on, and they're kind of working in tandem together. One had been external equity, diversity, and inclusion efforts, which are important engagement activities with the community around EDI with recommendations that came from our task force. And then we also internally have equity, diversity, inclusion blueprint or plan that we're putting together right now. And so we're recommending that we basically focus on those areas that council identified coming straight out of the task force that we can implement sort of immediately. And those were some communications recommendations around language justice, some recommendations around cultural celebrations, and that staff will continue to work on those and come back to council with kind of an update on what our plan is around that. And then, pause on developing sort of that next step of implementation of the community-based EDI effort. That's kind of what that first one is. The sustainability building code update. Yeah.
Can I just propose something? Yeah. So I think we'll be here until midnight if we go through every single one of these. So I think we should maybe just see if council members have any questions or comments on any of them on the page, if that's okay with everybody.
I'm good with that. That's a nice, efficient process. Council members, that work? I see thumbs up and head nodding. Okay, good.
And then I'll raise my hand for a couple on this page.
Okay, go ahead.
Just thank you. I think that that's great direction on the first one. Just want to make sure everyone's clear that the immediate recommendations of the task force with the cultural events and things like that will go on. We just won't have a broader discussion about the next steps. So we'll still see those activities like Juneteenth and the other activities that we have planned to do. They'll still happen throughout the year. And then on the Highway 42 on transportation and community design, I just want to call out for the group that everyone then recognizes that means that like the Via Appia redesign would be paused for this year, so that staff would have the bandwidth to work on the recovery and the rebuilding. So the only transportation project that would go on is the concept review on 42, and then some of the things that are already ordered, like the Hawk signal on Eisenhower, because those are already like the quiet zones, those are already projects that are under construction or underway, but we wouldn't be initiating those new projects. I just wanted to call that out to be sure everyone was clear on that.
Thank you, Mayor. Good clarification. Comments or questions on anything you see in front of you? Okay. Megan, if you want to page up or down, whatever, up. Okay. Comments or questions? And Megan, just a reminder, if I clarified that, or if I stated that correctly, is based on our December conversation, these are things that staff will continue and there will be impact with council meetings, et cetera. And again, the items in green are just some modifications to either reduce the scope or create new focus for those.
Yeah, that's correct. And I would just call attention to those that we are recommending modification, like the transportation master plan that the mayor called out. If you look at the bottom of sort of aspects to be removed, you'll see that same item with the pieces that we're recommending to sort of delay or to, postpone. So they've been pulled off of this top section.
Good.
Yeah.
Comments or questions? Yes, Councilmember Lay? I think you're on mute, sir. Still can't hear you.
Sorry.
There you go. There you go.
I will probably incur the wrath of the mayor on this one. But I think in terms of the number 7, I'm not sure. I mean, just when we're talking about, well, are we talking about are we just talking about the language here? Or are we talking about prioritization?
We're just talking about making sure we understand the language and what's in front of us. I
Okay.
believe that they will continue in prioritization because many of them are ongoing and have a lot of work already completed.
Mhm. Can you tell me on number 7 where things are at on that, just very quickly, Megan? Or
I can, and I think Ember may be on too, but so this was to actually implement the open space zoning changes that we got additional direction from council at the end of last year. So I do know we're having some challenges with finding a surveyor to do this work. So we've been trying to contract to have a surveyor to do the work to move this forward. So I don't believe that we have a surveyor at this time. I don't know, Ember, if you are on. Yes.
We did receive 2 bids pre-fire. They've been on hold since fire. The cost estimates were drastically different. So our next steps would to be host a meeting with the consultants to finalize scope and get clarification on their strategies. But a timeline hasn't been adopted and a contract has not been accepted at this point.
okay, that's all for now.
Okay, thank you, Mayor.
I'll hold my comments. Thank you.
Okay, anything else on that? So these do not need to be prioritized because they are carry forward, ongoing, continuing items, correct? So I think our focus then is there are 2 things that are left. The new initiatives, which were part of our brainstorm in our December meeting, and to have some additional discussion, and we do want to prioritize these. And our goal would be to have no more than 3 to 4 high priorities, just based on the scope of everything else that's going on. I think that's a workable number, as you heard Megan and Jeff speak to that. But these are the areas where we probably want to spend most of our time. And then we want to do a good review of the items for consideration for hitting the pause button and postponing to make sure that there's agreement on that. So let's look at those. Go ahead, Megan.
Yeah, June, we have actually prioritized the carry forward items moving forward because there have been incidents where something that was a really high priority, it shifts when we add in new priorities. So we've included them in that total number of, whatever that is,
right.
20 priorities. So I think that's why we've kind of captured them in the past as a part of.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so do we need to prioritize those now, or do we want to prioritize the new initiatives first and then go back and do our, see what else is there? Council? Recommendations? Because we have not prioritized the new initiatives yet. Now, my recommendation is we start with those. Let's start with number 9. Okay, and let's take these one at a time, Megan, because you did add continue with facility upgrades for the city climate change greenhouse gas reductions. And what is the impact of that? Continue with facility upgrades.
So previously this was a two kind of pronged approach, which included community greenhouse gas reduction initiatives and programs, as well as sort of a internal city-based initiative. And so we're recommending that we stay focused on the facility upgrades versus kind of the community-wide greenhouse gas reduction initiatives that would be kind of new that we were looking to develop.
Thank you. Councilmember Most?
So I think this is kind of interesting because of the new codes and because of the number of homes that have been destroyed. We're looking at having a significant impact on decarbonization for the folks who are rebuilding. And I guess I don't know if this is appropriate or not appropriate, but I keep thinking, we're working on all these incentives and rebates and all kinds of things to help alleviate the financial pressure on folks who are rebuilding. But and maybe we can't do this year, but boy, I would think it would be great to also expand that so people in the community could also take advantage. People whose houses haven't been destroyed by fire could take advantage of that. And I don't know if it's just too much complexity because of the focus on fire recovery, but we're doing so much. I don't know. There's so much talk about this in the community right now. Maybe it is too much, but it just seems like it would be a loss to just say, okay, this is only focused on fire recovery, because if other people want to jump in, then I think it would be great because they're learning about all this stuff. It would be great to find a way to support them to do it.
Comment to that, Councilmember Maloney?
Well, when I read this one, I was reading it as it really was an internal thing that we were doing, and we were addressing the facilities. So I guess I'd like clarification for other counselors if you're viewing it that way or more broadly.
Go ahead, Councilmember Brown.
Yeah, I think I did view this as a internal. Just reading this earlier, I viewed this as an internal item.
Mayor?
I think that it's been rewritten to be an internal item, but I think what Councilmember Most's point was that it would be nice to be able to expand it back to what we had originally envisioned. And so I understand and just want to share, like, every single opportunity that I'm working on, and I'm sure staff is doing this, and I know the energy office and SWEEP are doing this too, that if we can extend the rebates and discounts and other programs that we're developing right now to a bigger reach, we're trying to do that. But there's, obviously the focus and the urgency is around making sure those programs exist for impacted residents.
Councilmember Fahey?
I agree with what the mayor just said, and I think that pretty much covers it. That we need to focus on the internal, and if we can help other non-fire impacted residents, that would be wonderful. But that would kind of be a bonus, I guess.
Okay, so create the focus. Councilmember Most?
Yeah, I'll just quickly say I'm fine with that. As long as it's sort of on the table, that if we have the chance to make it bigger, to extend it more broadly, then we should. And then hopefully next year, maybe we can start thinking about that more strategically.
Yeah. So here's the process I'd like to recommend. I want to continue to go through the new initiative items, get the discussion and the questions answered, and then come back to each one of them and ask for each one of your top three, which are your highs, so that Megan can start calculating which ones you determine are your highs, and we can count those to see where you stand. But I think it would be premature to start saying that would be a high item for me without hearing the rest of them, if that works for you. Okay, let's go to item number 10. Megan, if you want to scroll up, please. Okay. Park, streetscapes maintenance and improvement plan. Megan, I'm just going to let you do again your continuation, what the green means.
Yeah, so this is really just to continue with the current staff effort, and we did have a recommendation to kind of add an additional focus on wildfire mitigation, which I think is something we will probably continue to do, or that we'll be adding into a lot of our work and processes moving forward.
Okay. Other comments or questions about this item number 10? Okay. Item number 11, comp plan and pay equity studies. It looks like a continuation. Okay. Number 12, amend rules of procedure to allow electronic participation. This is the pause until we get back to in-person meetings. Councilmember Most?
Given the fact that Boulder County has lifted the mask mandate, I think we actually have to address this. I don't, one way or the other, we have to address it. And I think we can do it fairly quickly. But I think we actually really need to take a look at this, because there are people now that Boulder County has changed their status, changed their recommendation, are going to expect us to begin to have in-person meetings. So I think this is going to have to be a priority. We're going to have to something we need to figure out what our approach is going to be and take care of it.
So the recommendation is not hit the pause button on this.
Yeah, I don't think we can, because I think, the dynamics of what's happening in the county have changed. And so I think we need to be able to respond to it.
Yeah, it's a moving target, is what's going on. Mayor, and then Councilmember Brown.
So I think as long as we have our emergency order on the pandemic and the pandemic persists, we can continue to allow electronic meetings. I don't think that gets away from the need to have the discussion about getting back to in-person meetings, but I think it allows us, within the context of that emergency declaration that stands, to be able to do hybrid meetings and electronic in-person and remote testimony. So I think it is possible to have the concentrated discussion about how we get back together and how that looks and what's appropriate, and delay actually amending our meeting rules for the long term. But if we can fit it in, I think the problem is time. I don't know that we have time to amend our rules, and I believe we can accommodate the changes that are needed under the emergency order that we already have in the community.
Councilmember Brown?
I think I was queuing up for item number 13. So if we're
okay. Anything else on anything else on item number 12? Okay.
I guess
you're on, sir. Oh, go ahead, Mayor.
Sorry, I was sort of not disagreeing with Councilmember Most, but I just wondered what Councilmember Most, how you felt or how others felt. Like, do people feel like we could have a discussion about getting back to in-person meeting, or how that would look, or some hybrid approach without amending our rules? Or do people think we need to amend our rules of procedure to address the overall global issue?
I'm okay with not. I just think we need to address this in terms of looking at hybridization going forward and managing that. If we can do it without the rules change, then that's fine with me.
As long as you're flexible, it sounds like.
I just think we have to be responsive to what's happening in the community.
It makes sense. Okay, I got 3 hands raised. Back to you, Councilmember Brown.
Yeah, thanks. And I just want to speak to I really think that item number 13 is going to be a helpful discussion to have. And I want to also just put it in the context of our broader challenges around affordable housing, especially now as people try to rebuild and our housing stock has been dramatically changed. And so I know there are a couple of items, or we've had discussions about affordable housing in the past, and so putting it in the context of maybe some other options that might actually be helpful as people rebuild, and think about how to utilize their property in a different way. I'd just be interested in that, in that discussion. And I think item number 13 is on that track.
Okay, Councilmember Fahey.
Thank you. Yes, on item number, 12, I think it's important to have some kind of procedure in place, and I'm with Councilor Most that I don't particularly care how that happens or how official it is, but it's important that we have that option when we decide that that's what we would like to implement.
Okay, Councilmember Dickinson.
Yeah, I think similar comment. If staff and the mayor are confident that we can transition to in-person meetings and still allow electronic participation while we wait for amending the official rules, that's fine. I don't want us put in a situation where we have a big break from the electronic participation because we haven't gone through this. So I'm okay either way, as long as we're able to maintain that electronic participation.
Okay, Councilmember Lay.
Yeah, I don't know that I feel any differently about 12. I guess I may not be getting the same comments from the community about the urgency of going back to in-person meetings, but obviously we want to make sure that if and when we do that, we're able to continue the electronic participation. I don't think there's any question about that. I think to Councilmember Brown's comment about 13, I think this is certainly one of the areas that we talked about. This one is hard. I know the mayor in the past has talked about, that putting affordable housing generally, even before the fire, was going to be a fairly big lift. Now that there's a fire, or the fire has occurred, it's perhaps a bigger lift, but it's also potentially the right time to talk about at least a few of the kinds of measures that Director Zacaro talked with us about some months ago, this being one of them. So, I think it's still important to include. I think there are other places where we're talking about some affordable housing issues on EDU, and I know that one is a big one too. But I think somewhere I think it's useful for us to have that discussion, because I think at some point it may be a really important way that we help people to build back.
Okay. Councilmember Brown.
That's a residual hand. Sorry, June.
Okay. Councilmember Maloney.
Thank you, June. I'm going to comment on a few of these. The question I have about number 12, and I don't know if the IT director is on the call. Oh, he is on the call. I'm just curious how close we are technically to being able to do that. That would inform me. So, Chris, can you answer that question?
Yeah, I think we've been playing with some hybrid technologies. I think it can be done. It's happening around Colorado, and we've been following what other jurisdictions are doing. So it would require a little bit of research, but I think we could pull it off.
Okay, well, right now it shows that it's a low staff impact. Is that correct?
Yes, I believe it would be low. We would work with the clerk to come up with a solution for how to pull off the meeting.
Okay, thank you, Chris.
Great question.
On number 13.
Oh, I was, Dennis, or Mayor Pro Tem, I was going to say Meredith, City Clerk Muth might have a little more information because she's done that research. And I think there's maybe some clarification around this that might help too.
Thank you.
Meredith.
Yeah, so as you've seen from the meetings we did earlier, or I guess late last year, we do have the ability to have a hybrid meeting. It worked fine having people on Zoom giving public comment and all of council being in chambers. So I think technically we're able to do it. I would say, and I will have to go back and review it in case I'm incorrect, but I believe even under the emergency declaration, the way the rules of procedure are written now, for council, it's either all in person or all remote. There's no option for some of you to be in the room and some of you to be on Zoom, I believe. So we'd have to revisit that part of the rules, I think.
So could we do that with a redefinition under the emergency procedure?
I think we just have to rewrite the rules of procedure, which we did 3 or 4 times during the early part of the pandemic. So it's not particularly difficult.
Thank you.
Okay. Your other questions, Dennis?
Yeah, well, I have 2 more comments. So on number 13, I think that one, I don't believe it's incredibly hard to do, but I think it is important to get ahead of any potential development in areas where we do rezoning. And then on 14, getting back to boring business that we were doing prior to, the Marshall Fire and even the pandemic, there's concern about our solid waste contract, and that's something that does expire in 2023. And that's something I absolutely think needs to happen this year to meet the needs of the community. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anything else on the list? Item 15? Oh, anything else on item 14 and or 15? No change, staff continue. What else do we have? We have more scroll. There we go. There, I knew there were a couple left. Okay, items 16 and 17. Comp plan. And Megan, the recommendation is address the pre-planning pieces in 2022, but actually start the update in 2023.
Yeah, I think that's correct. And Director Zuccaro can share some additional information, but what we were thinking is that kind of pushing out any initiation of the comp plan, and we were going to initially do a little bit of kind of pre-visioning, and we thought, we would push that out to 2023, but we did have some things like a housing study that we wanted to complete to help provide some information in advance, and we have grant funding for that, so we would like to move that forward. And then also had talked about doing a market leakage study, and so we could get those started like in Q4. We could kind of start those processes to get ahead of starting the comp plan then in 2023. Rob, do you have any other comments?
No, I don't. Just other than it's just kind of shifting and, looking at potentially having a little bit more compressed process than we were initially anticipating. But I think later in 2022, we'll have a better feel for what, council wants to do as far as the whole scope. So I think part of this, in addition to starting those studies, is working with council on the scope of the whole plan development, because we do want council to be comfortable with the scope and have buy-in in the scope of the whole process. So hopefully we have a very positive comp plan, 10-year update.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments, questions? Okay, let's scroll quickly through City Council annual and recurring items, then we'll come back and do some prioritization. But these are the items that, Megan, the rationale for keeping those is just to provide the balance of these things have to happen. So it impacts the work planning and it impacts how many priorities we can have. It's just background information, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
And there were no changes made here. We do have Marshall Fire recovery here. Just thinking to Councilmember Most comment earlier about the emergency response. I was thinking we could add to this regional partnerships, sort of an evaluation of the emergency response, emergency management system, because that will be considered sort of a collaborative regional partnership effort. So we could add that as one of our, kind of priorities for this year. But other than that, there have not been changes.
Okay. So let's do a quick scan then of the items for consideration for removal, and make sure you have an understanding of why those were removed, and is there absolutely anything that, given all the other stuff, is there something that absolutely must stay on the work plan for consideration of prioritization? So, and we've got quite a number of them, so I'd like to go through these quickly. Councilmember Fahey?
Oh, I was just going to say the one thing that I thought I would not like to see removed is the open space tax reauthorization, because that also sunsets in 2023. And so I think it needs to be renewed this year in order for it not to have to go to ballot again to be reinstated, I guess. So that was my only thing that I would like to keep on there.
Okay, and is that item 4? A hard time
That
reading
is
this.
item 4, the last item in item 4.
4, okay. Megan?
I think, I think that's something we can certainly bring forward. We're happy to pull that information together and bring it forward. Yep. If council wants to pursue that this year versus waiting.
Okay, Councilmember Dickinson.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a hard list, or it's a really exciting list of a lot of cool things that we want to do. And so it's hard to see so many things on this list, and kind of right in our face that like we're not going to do these things. So I really appreciate staff and Mayor Pro Tem making some tough decisions to put things down here. I'd like to. I think that one that I would like to comment on is number 25. Develop a locally constructed renewable energy facility. I realize that that's a big thing, but it takes a long time, and I think it's going to be incredibly important if we're trying to provide more net zero building in our community. That something like this might be super helpful. So I just want to throw that one out there, and then the other one is number 16, and only because it says medium here, and I don't, and so
medium staff impact.
Yeah, medium staff impact. So I'm assuming that's the case. My understanding was it was low. So maybe just kind of checking back with staff that I don't think this is of the highest priority for the city, but it's something that I've wanted to deal with since 2019, 2020, 2021. And for good reason, it keeps getting pushed, whether it's the pandemic or the fires or what have you. But my sense is that this is, a very low effort piece, but maybe I'm wrong. So if you could just speak to, what's complicated about this, or how many meetings this would take, or how much staff time it would take.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. If you recall from our December meeting, we consolidated. So we kind of lumped together the dog licensing items. So the breed specific ban is something that would not take a lot of time. The updates to abandonment, basically all the other changes to the dog licensing requirements are much more substantial. And Meredith can give a little bit more context. I think the clerk's office manages the dog licensing requirements, but it would require a lot more work than the breed specific ban changes.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'd agree with Megan. The breed specific ban is simple ordinance change. It's not difficult at all. The other updates, I can speak to how the time it would take to change our licensing program, or one thing. The chief would have to speak to if there's at all the ability to enforce any of that right now. So that's kind of a two-part thing. Updating the code is one thing, enforcing it is kind of another thing as far as staff impact goes.
Good point. Councilmember Most?
Sorry, I'm trying to unmute myself. Just as a follow-on to Councilmember Dickinson's, I guess, and this kind of relates to 17 as well. One of the issues that as far as dog licensing is we're not enforcing it. Like, so what would it take just to, if we could remove the pit bull and find a way to enforce dog licensing, and maybe that's just too much because our police force is too busy doing other things. But that's kind of a pet peeve of mine, which is we have very few dogs licensed, and we have, a requirement to license them. So I also look at 17, we're talking about, it's a code enforcement to address these situations. Well, why isn't code enforcement addressing these situations? What's the holdback, from getting code enforcement to actually enforce the code, whether it's around dog licensing or roaming dogs or agricultural, using property that's not designed for agricultural, is that just an issue with kind of tightening up our code enforcement? And is that something that really doesn't need to be done at a city council level, but can be done with the police chief? Because I assume that's under his purview.
Other comments as you look at the list? Anything else that should come back on? And Councilmember Dickinson, you really hit the nail on the head, because Jim Collins, the author, the thought leader on leadership, says that the hardest thing for leaders to do in today's age is to create your stop doing list, to make room for the true high priorities. And everybody wants to do everything. And we respond with, well, that's just a simple thing. That's just, it's a simple ordinance. But when you think about the impact of everything else that you're trying to get done. So I just want to caution you that as you get ready to do your prioritization, that you're ready to focus on those things that are most important, as well as urgent or some combination. So thanks for reminding us of that, Councilmember Dickinson. Anything else on that list worthy of discussion that you want to bring forward? Rather than go through each one of them, I think if you have that in front of you, or do you need us to go through each page up so that you can do a quick scan? Would that be helpful? Thank you, Megan. Councilmember Brown?
Thanks, June. I just want to sort of commiserate with my colleagues here. There are a lot of things that are important to me on this list, and things that I'm disappointed to see fall to the bottom. I'd like to just make sure that we maintain this list, and then when we are revisiting work planning for the next year, that these are some of the first items that we consider adding, because there's a lot of important things on here, but but the fire has changed the prioritization of all of our work. And so if we can revisit some of these in the future, I'd really appreciate that.
And I do believe that was the intention, that when it says cancel, these are temporary cancels until your world changes. But I like the recommendation, and I think the recommendation creates the focus that's needed, that says that for work planning next year, that these items immediately are resurrected so that you can put your attention on them, so that we don't forget that. So let the minutes and the notes reflect that. Thank you. Councilmember Fahey, and then the mayor.
I would just like to reiterate Council Brown's comments. I really think that these things are important items, or they wouldn't be in this list to begin with. So I would like to see them added to next year's work plan as a minimum. Just say these are things we still want to do. Thank you.
That makes sense. Mayor?
Thank you. I just wanted to touch back on item 17 for just a moment. So the way I read this one, it says that code enforcement can address these issues without council legislation. And I think that's fantastic if that's what happens. Our inaction on taking care of this issue has cost the city and the school district millions and millions of dollars in taxes that have not been collected. And so I think this has urgency and should be prioritized by staff.
So bring it to them.
I don't think there's any council act. So the only reason this even became a council item is because it has gone unaddressed for so long. So we were looking for a legislative solution to something that could be handled administratively. But since we're saying we don't have time to take up the legislation, I would hope that it is handled administratively, because it's costing the school district and the other taxpayers millions of dollars in lost revenue that any other tax-paying entity would have to pay. And so we need to address this in terms of just equitable treatment of all of our residents.
I'm assuming so noted, Jeff and Megan, and your directors. Okay, thank you, Mayor. Anything else on this list? Okay.
Could I please circle back to just get a temperature reading, make sure others, Councilmember Fahey brought up the open space tax reauthorization. Would others like to see that
excuse me,
put back on the list for 2022?
Because of the timing. Yeah, thank you.
Because of the timing. And also I would comment, we have medium high as the staff impact, and the open space tax reauthorization of those two is a lesser of a staff impact because it's a reauthorization of an existing tax. So I would just point that out, that I think putting together a new sustainability and renewable energy tax, as we've been discussing, would take a little more staff capacity. Just to comment on that.
So you're primarily looking at the second bullet because of the timing. Okay, Councilmember Maloney, if you want to weigh in, and then Councilmember Lay.
Well, I just have a question for Megan. So do we have to vote in 2022?
I think that if what I'm understanding, Councilmember Fahey was suggesting is that, yeah, we would bring it to you to put on the ballot in 2022. And you could do that, or if you want to wait, we'll bring it to you at the beginning of 2023 to put on the ballot. That's the year that it expires. So I think the idea is if you bring it, yeah, that you have two shots if you need to.
Mayor Pro Tem Maloney, was your question, is there a municipal election in 2022? I think the answer to that question is no.
Right, that was the first question.
That was your question.
And the second, well, I really had two pieces. Thank you for the clarification, Mayor. You know, this doesn't have to happen in 2022. So this is something we could do in 2023, because I'm fairly confident it's something that would be reauthorized, in my opinion. So thank you.
Okay. And Councilmember Lay, where did you put your hand down? I saw you earlier, so it looks like you have nothing to add. Councilmember Fahey, in response to your response.
Yes, I didn't understand, and I thank Mayor Pro Tem for pointing it out, that it wouldn't expire unless it didn't pass the ballot in 2023. So if it doesn't have to be on the ballot this year in order to continue, then I'm fine with postponing it until 2023.
Okay, thank you. Good discussion. So Megan, was there anything that did end up going back up to for consideration for prioritization? Since you are the note taker.
Yep, no, I didn't capture anything that needed to go back up.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, good discussion. So just a heads up that Megan, I'm with you for the next 33 minutes. I have to have a hard stop at 8:15 Colorado time. I'm in a different time zone. So I'd like to get the process of prioritization started, and let's get as much done as I can, and then I'll turn it over to the mayor if I'm unable to complete my duties as assigned. Okay, so let's go to the first areas for consideration for prioritization, Megan. And while she's scrolling, a reminder, in your email, you were asked to be prepared. Now that may shift because of our conversation. What are your top three or four top priorities? The ones that you're saying, in my heart of hearts, these are the ones I want to see at the top of the list. And remember, in the past, in 2021, and I believe in 2020 as well, we had only about 4 high priorities. 3 to 5 is not a magic number. It is certainly a workable number. And so I'm going to ask you to take a stand and say, yeah, these are my votes. And then Megan, you can track that on that. Mayor, comment before we move on.
I wanted to comment on what we were starting into.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
I think that these are all fantastic. I think it's going to be very hard. So I would just like to offer up one for everyone to consider putting in the top category, and it's the compensation study. If you think about what we do as local government, is we provide services to community members that the private sector can't provide, or we provide public accommodations that the community has asked for. And so the employees that work for the city are the asset, and that is, who provides the services and who does all of the work for the community. That's who was working, 22 hours a day for the entire month of January, and who has worked tirelessly through the pandemic. I think it's really important that we prioritize the compensation study as high to send a message to the staff that we recognize that as critical, and that we recognize that there's been a tremendous amount of inflation and other pressures that have impacted the need to adjust compensation. So I think would be a misstep if we don't address that as one of our high priorities. Thank you.
And that's number 11. So we have one vote for comp study. And Megan, if you'll track these along with me. Councilmember Lay?
Yeah, I mean, bipartisan, I absolutely second what the mayor has said. Maybe from a slightly different angle as an employment lawyer. This is a huge, well, it's an opportunity for us to take advantage of the skills that our new HR director brings to the table, but it's absolutely crucial in so many areas. And just the ones that the mayor has talked about, as well as police and elsewhere. And it's important to, as a sign to our own folks, it's also important because we're going to need a lot of help, a lot of good help.
Yeah.
We've had so I absolutely put that in one of my.
Okay. So 2 votes for comp study number 11. Councilmember Most?
Okay, I'm confused. So a point of clarification. Are we just talking about the new initiatives? Because are we assuming like all the Marshall fire recoveries are happening, the carry forward and ongoing are happening. So we're just looking at the new initiatives, which is the blue section. Is that correct?
Megan?
Yeah, again, I mean, I think if you want to, I mean, in the past, we've included the carry forward because I think those are, we can't sort of, I think we need to include the carried forward items also.
So you're looking at 2 lists.
Okay, so we're looking at, of those 2 lists, which we think are the highest priorities. I'm just trying to.
Yeah, your top 3, your top 3 priorities in what I called the green section and the blue section. So it's the carry forward. And then
thank you.
Yeah.
So I make sure I'm doing this correctly.
Good, thank you. Thank you for the clarifying question. So everybody gets three votes. And so I've got Ashley and Chris on comp study number 11. Councilmember Brown.
Thanks. The comp study, I'll pile on to that one. I really agree with that. I also want to raise up item 13 related to affordable housing. I think that's a really important conversation that we need to continue to have, especially in light of the shortage of housing in general right now in Louisville.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Dickinson.
Yeah, so I mean, my problem with going above that line is, we have things like the biennial budget. So that's a must do. The state collection of online sales tax for me, like, kind of feel like must do's. So if those have to be 2 of my 3, or maybe I just get to ignore those because those are must do's and it's not a matter of prioritizing. I had 11 and 16. And again, I think the comp plan, it's critical that we at least get started on that. So that was on my list. And then, not to cheat here, but I had 9, 12, and 15 because they're only 1 meeting each, according to staff. So when I think about like those 3 require the least amount of council time. And like, 15 is a big LRC lift. And so I think, I think that one, just thinking about like the things that we can do sort of quickly. So just wanted to throw those out there.
Okay, what was number 16? I can't scroll as fast as.
Yeah, no problem. 16 is the comp plan, at least starting the housing study and the pre-planning pieces in 2022, as it said. So I won't say 11, Mayor, because you already said it, and a bunch of other people said, so it's not even a priority. I don't even care about number 11. But 16, 15, 12, and 9.
Just as a reminder, I think how this has worked in the past is like, well, the staff have been getting the high priority items done every year.
Yes.
And then they also have gotten many of the medium priority projects, if not all of them done. So I think we really just need to pick out the highest ones that we're saying, these are the ones that we have to get done. So your point, I think, is very good on the budget, and like the sales tax one, like we have to get those done. So we have to list those as high. So I think that's a great point, Councilmember Dickinson. And then I think some of the one meeting ones, if they become medium, I guess staff would work those in. If
Right.
they really are easy and could just be placed on the consent agenda, like if the meeting rules is as easy as it's been described, maybe that can just be worked in.
Good clarification, Mayor. So what the high priorities just gives staff a focus to say, we're going to do everything in our power to ensure successful completion. The rest of the items will either end up in the medium and if we get that far, we can identify the differentiation between the mediums and the low. So I think that's a good distinction. Councilmember Maloney.
So thank you, Counselor Dickinson, for just putting them all out there, because that's what I wanted. That's what
That's
I
right.
wanted. That's what I wanted to do as well. So within the green, I had number 3, which is the transportation master plan focusing on Highway 42. Number 8, the biennial budget. Number 6, the online sales tax, and that is my priority order for those 3 that I selected in the green.
Okay.
In the blue, I had, the first one I had was number 16 is the comp plan, number 14, the solid waste contract, and number 11 for pay equity.
Say those again. I know that Megan's taking notes, but I'm also trying to help out here. So number 16
So-
comp plan, and what were the other 2?
14 solid waste contract and number 11 pay equity.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Okay. Who else? Councilmember Fahey.
Well, I will go with the same 3 in the second section, 11, 14, and 16. In the first section, I agree, we have to do those tax items. And so I would go with the budget first of all. And then the 6th, the sales tax, and what the third one was. Actually, I think the third one for me is number 1, the EDI efforts.
Okay, Councilmember Most.
You're muted.
We can't hear your brilliance, Maxine.
Okay,
We
I
need-
said I feel
there
like
you
I'm in a
go.
Chinese restaurant with a bunch of people and we're trying to figure
yeah.
out what to order. And I can't, it's like, it's so hard because these are so important. So I guess I'll just do what everyone's doing, which is, doing more than I'm supposed to, but the carry forward and onward, I feel like the EDI is really, really important. And I think there are a lot of implications looking at things like affordable housing and looking at things like fire recovery and everything else where we actually need to incorporate this. So, I mean, I guess this is really based on what the recommendations that were made by by our task force. So I don't know what the overlap is there, but I'm just concerned that we did that and we don't lose it. So I'd say that I would.
And what number was that one?
That's number 1 in the green.
Okay.
So I guess I'm with Councilmember Fahey on that one, and then. Okay. Yeah, I agree. As far as like the collection of online sales tax, we just had a finance meeting that was enormous. That was like a huge impact to our overall tax base. And, same thing with the biennial budget. We just have to do those things. The other things, like some of that stuff, we're just, like the airport stuff, we're just going to do. I don't think there's a huge impact to that overall. And then in the new initiatives, I guess for me, it would be, I did this before and now it's changing obviously after
After the discussion.
Yeah, it's like, okay, wait, I thought I knew what I was gonna say. I think that the comp plan is critical. I
Okay.
think that, I actually think that climate change greenhouse gas reduction initiatives, number 9. And I'm not gonna say 11 because so many other people are saying 11. So I think that 12, because it should be like, I guess it's not, we're talking about priorities. Like, so I really want 12 to get done. So I'll say 16, 9, and then 13,
13?
Yeah, the affordable housing thing. Yep. Okay.
Okay. Mayor?
Thank you. So I feel like we need to sort of reset just for a second. So a number of these, like number 1 on EDI, the way I read that one, and it's not on the screen right now in front of everybody, but I read that the staff was going to proceed with where we are and there wouldn't be new initiatives created. So there's already a plan with the high level recommendations and they're going to act on those things. So we would just pause the council discussion for now. And so I guess I'm not understanding prioritizing that as high because they're going to move forward the initiatives that are in the works. We're going to consider equity, diversity, and inclusion in our hiring and in all of our council decisions. So that one I felt like was sort of like, we're not going to have a separate council discussion about what other new initiatives. The staff's just going to take the ball and run. So that's so I wasn't prioritizing that because I sort of felt like that one was moving along without us. And then same thing on number 9. And again, I don't have it in front of me, but if you could scroll down to number 9, sorry about that. Number 9, so this one, like we have a plan that the staff has been given budget for to work on decarbonization, and the staff's got to come up with a decarbonization plan for the other system. So this again was one that it doesn't seem like there's anything for the council to do. It's just that, like, staff can take the ball and run with that one. So some of them that were listed, I guess it was just framing the choices differently. So I might just be confused, but I think we can take some of those off and just focus on what are the initiatives staff needs to work on. To bring the council to have a new policy put in place. And so the only one I heard that I guess gives me pause is the comp plan. And I completely understand why everybody wants to elevate that one to high. And that was if everything was different and we were having this discussion in January like normal, then that would absolutely have been put high. And I think where we are, when you look at what resources we have and what staff members we need to have working on these other initiatives, like code, like debris removal, like coordinating building. I don't like if Red Tail Ridge is developed, all of those staff will be pulled into that as well. There's just a lot on the plate of the planning department, and I can't vote for that one for high. I feel like that one is going to slip. And like, that's where we have to be accepting that some of these timelines, it's painful and horrific to think about because we really wanted to work on these things, but it just seems like that has to slip compared to those other things that were either required by law to do or have a moral obligation to address as quickly as we can to get people back home. So I can't vote for that one, but I completely understand why you all have, and I respect that. And then I just want to put in a plug. I think 13 is important because I don't believe the council's willing to do a moratorium on new development outside of the impacted areas. And so I anticipate that there will be several applications that come in over the course of the year that will be required to review. And if we don't have number 13 in place before we review them, it will be a very big lost opportunity for the community. So I would elevate 13.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification. So elevate 13, the affordable housing one?
Yes.
Okay. Councilmember Lay? You have to speak louder with your microphone on.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I've got like multiple screens that I'm trying to, and they're all covering each other.
Right.
I've shuffled mine a little bit as a result of the discussion too, which is a good sign, not a bad sign, right? That we're having some impact on one another. And also, just the sort of way in which the staff has presented these things as well. Some of these things are going to happen kind of anyway, so I'm not sure I really need to look at them or characterize them as high priorities. But the ones, excuse me, let me get it back up here. For in the green, the carry forwards, the budget is number one. The collection of online sales tax, I would say, is the second. And I would put a pitch in for the Old Town Overlay District. Not for probably moving it back a little bit to the later part of the year, but I think that that's important. We've done a lot of work on that, and I think it would be good to kind of bring it home. And then in new initiatives, excuse me, I think I agree that number 13 is important. I think what I would say, I guess this one is really specific, and I'm wondering, I don't know, I guess I'd be nice to think of, I don't know whether we're talking more generally about doing something in the area of affordable housing or whether we're only talking about doing this. But I would put that, I'm sort of thinking maybe some room there, but 13, definitely 11, which I've said before. And the other one is, frankly, number 10, I wanted to speak in favor of, because I think we have had a lot of discussion this last year about maintenance of parks and streetscapes. I think we need to keep that very much a priority. So I would put that one as the third.
Thanks, Chris. Councilmember Most.
Okay, so now I feel like I ordered my food at the Chinese restaurant and I've been told that I can't have certain menu items.
No, you were asked to consider certain menu items. You were not told not to.
It's like they're out of war wonton soup. Okay, so given sorry, I'm a little bit giddy. It's been a long day. Given the mayor's comments, then
she influenced you.
The mayor influenced me. So assuming that some of these things are just going to be happening, right? Like it kind of tweaks my thinking. So then when I'm looking at the new initiatives, then if we assume that 9 is sort of happening already, I kind of think that Mayor Councilmember Lay's comments, I mean, on 10 are important because this whole asset management process is really, really important. We don't have it. So I would say, so I'm changing. So I'm 10, 11, and 13. That's where
10, 10, 11, and 13. So we'll take you off of comp plan.
Yep. Sorry.
That's okay. And take you off of 12. Okay. Megan, I hope you're following this better than I am. Okay, Councilmember Maloney.
Well, Megan's amazing. I'm sure she's got it all under control.
I know. I never doubt her for a second. Thank goodness.
If the mayor will indulge me, I'd like to interrogate you about one thing about your choices. May I do that?
Absolutely.
Awesome. So number 16 is comp plan. When I looked at that, we're really targeting the fourth quarter. And I think you made a good point about how busy the planning department would be. I think that's absolutely right on. But it feels like to me that we need to do something in 2022 to tee this up for next year. Are you still thinking that that would be the consideration, that we would do something in the fourth quarter that would tee it up for 2023, or we would or not do anything at all?
So my preference would be to list it as medium in hopes that we would get to, so we got that grant for the housing study and there are some things in the works, but by listing it as high, I think that that gives the impression that it will absolutely get done. I think listing it as medium is like, we're hoping that this gets started with the pre-planning activities and the work on the housing study, but if something has to give, that's where I was proposing it. But I really would hope that it would start in fourth quarter. And oftentimes, in fact, not maybe every time, the staff complete most of the medium priorities in the plan as well.
Right. So I think our thinking is very similar. So it didn't feel like an interrogation. So I apologize for casting it that way. So I would like to take off my number 16 and put on number 13 as one of my votes.
Okay, take off 16, add number 13. Okay, thank you. Kyle, you had some more votes, sir. Anything you want to change, add to?
Thanks, June. Yeah, I'll be happy if we do 13.
Okay. Okay. Well, you already voted for 13. You
I already voted for that one.
You voted for 13 and 11, if my notes are correct.
He wants to vote for 13 twice.
I want to vote for 13
He wants
twice.
it so badly.
Yeah, no, I mean, I really think 11 is really important.
Okay.
I think 13 is really important.
Okay.
And then I haven't. Yeah, I think those are the. I mean, those are the ones that I'm really focused on. I mean, I don't disagree with what some of my other council members have said about 10 or you know, the 16. I think 16 is really important. I would like to get a start on that.
Okay.
You know, but I think I'm really focused on
okay. Well,
those other two. So
I got your two strong ones in boldface and then the other two in lighter font.
That's great.
Okay, cool. Councilmember Fahey.
Yes, I'm wondering about number 16. So I'm still wondering if we're going to start the process in December or the fourth quarter to get the process set up for 2023. And if so, then I can switch from 16 to a different number. But I wasn't clear on whether we were going to wait until 2023 to do anything on the comp plan.
So thank you. Our proposal is to start with the kind of, I don't know if accessory is the right word, but the studies that kind of accompany part of the comp plan, get those started in fourth quarter. So we would get a consultant on board during that time and then get those going. So they would still be ongoing into 2023. And then at the same time, or, you know, at the end of the year, as Director Zuccaro said, we hope we'll have a little bit of a better idea how things are going with the rebuilding and how planning and building department's capacity is. And then we would want to have some conversation in Q4 with council about how we really scoped the comp planning process for 2023.
Okay, so as long as there's going to be some initial work on the comp plan in Q4, I would change my priority also from 16 to 13.
16 to 13, okay. Okay. Has everybody weighed in on their votes? And I'll ask Megan, let's just do a quick recap because I've got two clear winners as priorities at this moment.
Okay. Do you want me to share, or we're still waiting to see if anyone has comments?
I think we're ready. Go ahead.
Okay. I would say I have two clear winners plus. So I mean, I would have as high sort of the adoption of the biennial budget, which we always kind of struggle with in these biennial years because we know it's going to be a top priority because it takes a substantial amount of both council time and staff time. The state's collection of online sales tax, and then number 13 and number 11. So those would be, I would see as the 4 high priorities. Is that what you have too, June? Did we lose June?
Yeah,
Oh, there you
you all froze on me there for a minute, but I'm back.
Okay.
Okay, so I heard number 13, number 11. I'm sorry.
Number 8 and number 6, those would be the 4 high priorities. And then in addition to the Marshall Fire recovery work.
Right. Okay. Okay. A couple comments and then I'm going to sign off, and then Mayor and Megan, if you wanted to continue the conversation, I hate to leave you at this, but we were optimistic that this would just be a 2-hour discussion. Haha.
We're close. We're close.
We're so close. Councilmember Brown.
Sure. Thank you, June. I just wanted to ask the mayor, I know we've got a number of people still from the public who are with us. What is the plan for, are we taking additional public comment tonight?
So on this, there's 1 round of public comment. So if council wants to take a vote and make some kind of change to the rules, we could do something different. But with the way it's been laid out, we've already taken public comment this evening.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
Just my only comment. So I was kind of tallying, and it looked like on line 10 was slightly different than the others in the pack of things. I don't know if that matches with tally, Megan, but I had 8, 6, 11, 13, and 10.
I had three people for item 10. I had Chris, Maxine, and Kyle.
Yep, and I think let's see, did we have 3 for another one? Well, we talked about the comp plan.
Yeah, I don't see any other 3 votes. I saw some 2s and some 1s.
2 for
But a
EDI.
few of us might have had 12. Maybe I'm wrong. And I know I did.
Yeah, I've got yours there, Caleb. Yeah. And we had Caleb and Maxine, and then she took that off in favor of something else.
Okay.
See, this is the hard part about Zoom. If I was in the room with you, I'd have my flip chart and we'd have all this right there in front of us. Mayor?
So thank you, June. And I think you're past your hard stop. And so Megan and I'll take it from here. And thank you very much for all your help. Councilmember Dickinson, on 12, I think maybe if we have just a little more discussion around that one here, I think we might be able to get to a resolution. So if the question is, should we work on a process to get back to in-person meetings, then I think that is a high priority for me. I think we lose out a lot on body language and communication and things like that in the virtual setting. So that's one thing. And so if that's how you're interpreting number 12, I think that I could come around to that one. But if it's simply to change our rules and continue to meet like this, I don't think it's a high priority at all.
While you're thinking about that, Caleb, I'm going to interrupt. I'm going to sign off. Thank you for allowing me to work with you, and
thanks, June.
Continued good luck and continued good luck in everything that you do. You guys are a great council, and Jeff and Megan, you've got the most amazing staff, all the pre-work. So thanks for the opportunity. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, June.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, June. Yeah, so Mayor, no, I agree entirely. If we're not going to meet in person, then it's very silly to take this up. I'm in person right now. So I'm hoping that we'll all get together. No one laughed at that joke. It's tough. It's, a muted crowd. But yeah, no, I really do think that we should try to move to, in-person meetings as soon as possible. And then therefore this becomes more urgent and important to make sure that we can continue to have the virtual component.
So I think just from the straight voting perspective on where we were, 8, 6, 11, 13, and 10 kind of were out of the pack. Are people good with that? So while everybody thinks about that, I think we have a little bit more work to do. So it looks like general agreement. Think about it. Let's take a 10-minute break because it's 8 o'clock. And when we come back, if there's heartburn over that being the high set, we can talk about it when we get back. So we will take a quick 10-minute break. It's 8:14. We'll be back at 8:24.
Mayor, can you just go through those numbers again of the high group? 8,
6, 11, 13, 10. Sorry that those are not new. 6, 8, 10, 11, 13.
Thank you.
Sorry. We'll welcome everybody back from the break. Thanks for hanging on with us, everybody. And very good. Welcome back. And so when we went to break, we were just all thinking about numbers 6, 8, 10, 11, and 13 as high priorities to add to the list. Any council discussion on that as the grouping for high priority additions? Seeing none, that will be the group. And so in the past, we've then gone through and listed medium and low priority. I wonder what the group thinks about leaving the remainder as medium and asking the city manager to look at the departments and see, like, if there's time to work on a medium one, they'll elevate it. If the department is working on high ones and can't get to a medium one, it moves slower. Do people feel an urgency around going through and characterizing within the medium and low group which ones are medium and low? Councilmember Lay, you have a look.
Do you know that you're muted?
He didn't have a look. He was just saying he had no comment. I was just trying to start discussion. If people feel strongly about characterizing the remainder between medium and low, we can go through that exercise. If that doesn't seem like a good use of our time, then we don't have to. We can list them as medium and recognize that what we're basically giving direction then is that the high priority items are the ones that are, we expect to have done this year, and then the remainder are the ones that we find, may have to move around as time allows within our staff capacity, recognizing we're staffing up, we're doing all of these things, but it would be setting just the expectation that the high ones are the ones that will work to get done. Councilmember Most.
I'm pretty comfortable with that. I think, staff is we're going to have to rely on staff heavily this year, particularly because of the fire, to use their judgment. And so I'm comfortable with pulling out the high ones and then kind of saying everything else is medium, and I'm okay with that.
Councilmember Fahey?
I agree. If we just set the high priorities and then let staff decide how much time they have, it may be that, we'll set something as a medium or a low, but, the low is something that could fit in real easily, even though they couldn't get to a medium. So I think it's fine for them to decide what they have time to work on with the low and mediums.
Councilmember Lay?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think the only small reservation I have is that if all of the rest of them are mediums, and we've said that often the staff is able to get through mediums, then aren't we kind of delegating a little more discretion than we might want to? And frankly, staff may not like having that kind of discretion delegated to them. So that would be the only reason for saying maybe there are some that are either higher medium priorities or lower priorities.
That's a good point, Councilmember Lay. Mayor Pro Tem Maloney?
I can support the concept. I note that at some of them, like number 14 is one that I would think that the staff would absolutely do since the contract runs out. And, I'm sure the city manager will make sure that happens. So I'm fine with that, taking that approach, because where, I don't think we have to dictate all those things. We've said the highest priorities, and I believe staff will do the right thing with the rest of them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Maloney. And the good thing is we, as hard as it was for all of us, we left a group of things in the lowest tier, which is delay or pause. And so we have done some level of prioritization of the things that can be of an even lower urgency. So I'll turn it to City Manager Durbin and just see if that sounds all right to you as a pathway forward.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to say the same thing when I had a chance, that you've already done that by putting a pause on a lot of these items. I think in terms of lower priorities, there's still things you want to pursue, but they're lower priorities at the moment, given the fire and all the things we're working on. And looking through the new initiatives, you know, if you go through there, despite the prioritization, all the things that are medium, there's a lot of work going on already with these. So, you know, we are going to continue moving forward. And sometimes, you know, we can take advantage of a window for something that might seem a lower priority, that the timing's right for it. So we can make that happen today, when something that might on another day seem easier, today it takes a little longer. So there's always that balance of things that we've got going on in the hopper, so to speak. So we can definitely accommodate that.
Thank you, City Manager Durbin. And so I'll ask Deputy Manager Davis, are there other things that you want us to accomplish in this discussion?
No, I think you've done great work getting through this and really appreciate all the input.
Thank you very much. Thank you for all the work that you put into this, Deputy Manager Davis, getting it all ready and organized and all of the different things put together. It was really, really well done. Any other discussion from council members? All right, seeing none, we're adjourned. Thank you, everyone.